You are the best looking cupcake that I have ever seen. Yes, you are. Oh, you are my tasty cake cupcake, and oh, you look so delicious. Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm just here chatting away with my little cupcake. Yep. Did you ever talk to your food? You don't? Oh my goodness sakes, son, I must be really an odd person if I'm talking to my food because I'm telling my cupcakes here, my tasty cakes, how good they're going to be when I eat them. Mmm, cupcakes. You know, it's sort of like if I would be, patting this little cake saying, "You're such a good little cupcake. Pat it, pat the cup, pat a cake. Pat. Oh, now that reminds me, yes, of that rhyme that we've known because it's an old rhyme. It's been around for a long time. I bet you know it. Pat a cake, baker's man. Bake me a cake as fast as you can. Pat it and prick it and mark it with a B. Put it in the oven for baby and me. Now, I knew you knew that one, right? Well, the earliest recorded version of this rhyme actually appeared in a play in 1698, long time ago. And it's a story about a nurse who says to the people she was responsible for, "And pat a cake baker's man, so I will master as I can, and prick it 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 and throw it to the oven." Wow, that didn't sound like the same kind of rhyme that we say. It was rather long and it didn't make a lot of sense in the sense of rhyme, did it? So, in 1765, Mother Goose included this rhyme in the Mother Goose's Medley book, and it went like this: patty cake, baker's man, that I will master as fast as I can. Pat it and prick it and mark it with a T, and there will be enough for Tommy and me. Sounds a little closer to the one we said earlier, doesn't it? Now, why do you think that cake that they're referencing was marked with somebody's initials? Why would you put a T on there for Tommy or a B for baby? Well, there was a time when not all homes had ovens. Yeah, and so people would take their items like cakes they made to a local baker or a bakehouse and they would pay to have their items baked. And then the baker would mark the pastry with their initial so that they would be sure to get the right item. Well, that makes sense. Now, some of you have probably said this rhyme while you were playing a clapping game with another person. And you remember that it alternates between clapping one as an individual and then clapping with the other person and then crossing hands and all those kinds of things. And there's that complex sequence of clapping that has to be really coordinated. You know what? I don't do well at those clapping games. I'm easily confused and not very coordinated. But I know you've done it. I've seen you do it before. So, when a parent is playing this clapping game with their child, they could say the child's initial rather than using the B or the baby in the last two lines. For instance, if I'm playing this game with Amy, I would say, pat a cake, baker's man. Bake me a cake as fast as you can. Roll it and pat it and mark it with an A. Put it in the oven for Amy and me. Yeah. However, if someone were playing the game with me, they would say, pat a cake, baker's man. Bake me a cake as fast as you can. Roll it and pat it and mark it with an M. Put it in the oven for Milt and me. Yay, I get a cupcake. All right, put my little M on there. Now, it's marked just for me. Did you know that in ancient days, some people were marked to show that they belonged to someone else? Sort of like married people wearing wedding rings so that people know they are committed to someone. In the early Old Testament times, when some people still had slaves or servants, they would mark that person to show they belonged to them. Deuteronomy chapter 15 and Exodus chapter 21 is where we find that story. This is from Deuteronomy 15. It says, and this was the law that Moses was giving to the children of Israel. Suppose any Hebrew men or women sell themselves to you. If they do, they should serve you for 6 years, and then in the 7th year you must let them go free. And when you set them free, don't send them away without anything to show for all their work. Give them some animals from your flock, Also give them some of your grain and wine. The Lord your God has blessed you richly. Give to them as he has given to you, because remember, you were also slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God has set you free. That's why I'm giving you this command today, to set your slaves or servants free after 6 years. But suppose the servant says to you, Master, I don't want to leave you. I love you and your family. You take very good care of me. I want to stay with you. Well, then take this servant to the door of your house and poke a hole through his earlobe into the doorpost, and he will become your servant for life. So what would happen would be that this servant would have their ears pierced, just like some of you do when you put your earrings in. They would have their ear pierced as a way to say they wanted to belong or to be faithful to their master. It was an identifying mark, having their ear pierced. You know that we belong to God. Isaiah 43:1 says, People of Israel, he formed you. He says, do not be afraid, I will set you free. I will send for you by name, for you belong to me. Now we know that Jesus has invited us to belong to him and to belong to God. In 1 Corinthians 6, the Apostle Paul again says, don't you know your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit? The Spirit is in you, and you have received the Spirit from God. You do not belong to yourselves anymore. Christ has paid the price for you. So use your bodies in a way that honors God. Remember the piercing of the ear to show that the servant belonged to his master? Well, Jesus was pierced for us, right? By a sword on the cross. And he did that as a way of asking us to belong to him. He gave his body for us. That was a price he paid for us. So, what identifies us as belonging to God? Now, we don't go around with our ears pierced and have an earring hanging out of it that says, I am God's. No, rather, by the way we act is how people know whether we belong to God or not. And Jesus talked about that. In Matthew 7, he's talking about people who say they are God's, but they're not really. And he calls them false prophets. He says, watch out for false prophets. They come to you pretending to be sheep, but on the inside they are hungry wolves. You can tell each tree by its fruit. Do people pick grapes from bushes? Do they pick figs from thorns? No. In the same way, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree can't bear bad fruit, and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. You can tell each tree by its fruit. There's also a verse in the New Testament from Galatians that talks about the fruits. Remember the fruit of the Spirit? By your fruits you will know them, Jesus says, and here are the good fruits. The fruit of the Spirit produces love, joy, and peace. It is being patient, kind, and good. It is being faithful and gentle and having control of oneself. Wow, very, very cool. So, if I am a follower of Jesus, if I belong to him, I may not have my ear pierced, but I am showing fruit, good fruit. So it's sort of like this cake. Pat a cake, baker's man. Bake me a cake as fast as you can. Roll it and pat it and mark it with a J. Put it in the oven for Jesus and me. So like the cake and pat a cake, I carry with me the identifying marks of God. Or maybe a J for Jesus on my cupcake. Either way, I hope that you have a day that's filled with joy because you belong to God. That's right. He loves you, he gave himself for you, and he has asked you to follow him. So do that. Be filled with joy and have a day filled with peace. And enjoy your cupcakes.